U.S. to remain competitive in practice, more and more and more lower cost, lower skilled jobs are going to, whether you like it or not, have to move offshore.
At ang katumbas ng mabibili ng minimum na sahod sa isang araw, sahod ng manggagawa.
Minimum daily wage in the U.S. can buy 19 chickens.
Sa isang araw ay ang mabibili nito ay 19 na manok. At ikukumpara natin sa Pilipinas.
If we compare this with the Philippines, minimum wage here can buy only 3/4 of a single chicken.
3/4 na manok.
There, of course, is the profit motive and the motive to reduce costs that compel companies to take their labor-intensive operations offshore. But that is not to say that they do it in anything other than an honorable way.
Ya hemos nosotros, ¿verdad?, analizado y gente que...
We have analyzed the economic situations of the companies. We calculated how much a worker earns in Mexico and how much he makes in the States. Here, we earn $4 a day. There in the States, they make $5 an hour.
Quite honestly, companies are here because they want to cut their manufacturing costs. Mexico is just one of many countries that provides a lower cost manufacturing opportunity. It's very repetitive, very labor, manual intensive. Let's put it bluntly, it's boring work. They cannot find the American worker that wants to work on that job.
Well, we just got our layoff slips and they're moving the work somewhere else.
Everything went to Mexico, so the people in Mexico will enjoy our jobs while we're home, starving.
We need work the same as anybody else. We can do it as good as they can or better.
We built the Odyssey, we brought it up. We had a hard time of getting it started and getting it to working good, but when we did, they took it away from us and give it to somebody else.
The rule of the game seems to be if 50% of your manufacturing cost is in the United States, you either automate or you get out.
A new industrial revolution, born through developments in high technology and communications, has enabled manufacturing industries to extend assembly lines across international borders, sometimes reaching halfway around the world. The global assembly line holds economic and social consequences for people of both developing and industrialized nations. For 10 years, workers in Tennessee have seen the gradual shift of production operations abroad.
Everything's made overseas somewhere. We saw the radio go first.
We done the whole thing right here in Jefferson City. The whole thing, from its beginning. The whole group of Philips products for little stereos, for a home entertainment center type thing.
That's right.
They moved every one of those to...
They went to Japan.
Yeah, and we built the black and white TV, and we also built the color TV. The board, we built it from scratch, the board and all, and it went overseas.
It's a mining community until Magnavox moved in '56, and now it cannot go back to being a mining community because the mines are shutting down too. We don't know what kind of community it's going to be. I guess we would go back to agriculture and the family farm.
Managers claim American workers have priced themselves out of the market. Yet these unionized workers were earning an average of $5.40 per hour at the time of their dismissal.
In San Jose, where we have our offices, a typical per hour rate would be from $4.50 to $5.50. In a country like the Philippines, a typical per hour rate may be something like 70 cents. So you see there is a very large savings. It is now possible to manage offshore operations from across the ocean. American companies fabricate semiconductor dies using very expensive equipment. They are then packed and they are shipped by air. They land in Manila. Within the next 12 hours, they are on the floor of a subcomponent assembly facility, and the production process begins.
The export processing zone idea is special. It's a piece of territory, an area of land under customs control, where, if you will, international things can go on without affecting the economy of the country. Export processing zones have the advantage in countries that they make efficiency in export manufacturing. You bring in parts and components and machinery from all over the world. When you bring it into the zone, you don't have to pay duty. The red tape is much less. Then you can operate in a building in the zone. Around the world, there are probably 300 of them.
You can take U.S.-made materials or components, you can send them to Mexico or wherever for further or final assembly, and then bring them back into the U.S. for sale and or distribution and or additional manufacturing steps without paying duty on the goods made in the U.S. that were originally shipped out of the U.S.
In the Philippines, the Bataan zone, it cost a lot of money because they had to even build a dam there to hold back the water from the air they wanted to put the zone in. But they've been making Barbie dolls, and they've been doing some sewing. And this is a remote area of the Philippines.
Pinag-meeting ang mga tao nga darating dito ang export processing zone.
An Army officer held a meeting, and he told us that an export processing zone would be built here. Where your farms are, he said, we'll build a zone. Your houses will be transferred to a beautiful place. The soldiers from the Army came and bulldozed the mountains down. But it was the military and the governor who lifted the houses off their stilts. Our husbands, the fishermen, were out to sea when the houses were carried away. When they came back, they couldn't find their houses. Where are the houses? When they found their houses here, they cried.
Halos lahat ay nagtatanong doon sa aming bayan, sa gitnang kanluran na aking pinagmulan. Sila'y nalilito, ba't daw ako nagkaganito? Kung ano ang dahilan, ako lang ang nakakaalam. Magulang ko'y ginawa na ang lahat ng paraan upang mahiwalay sa aking natutunan. Subalit iniwan ko ang ibinigay na karangyaan. Ano ang dahilan? Ako lang ang nakakaalam.
The Bataan Export Processing Zone is just one of a half-dozen industrial zones in the Philippines. More than 50 countries now host offshore production manufacturing. Mexico began by opening its entire border with the United States to offshore assembly. The result, its Maquiladora program.
God made us neighbors, but who made us friends? The interchange of people in industry and needs and goods that have to be going across the borders. That is what is tying our two countries closer and closer together.
Because of the nearness of the United States to Mexico, it became possible to have the management team on the U.S. side together with its high technology and its high capital, living in a U.S. environment. And on the Mexican side, abundant unskilled labor.
20 years ago, when the maquila industry started, we started with the basics. We showed these people how to do assembly work, how to do soldering, how to do basic assembly, how to put a nut on a bolt.
Maquila means you're subcontracting. You're doing something for somebody else. At the end of 1965, you had 12 in-bond plants in Mexico, employing approximately 3,000 people. By the end of 1983, you had 629 of these plants.
I was just finishing my term as mayor of the city of Juarez. And at that time, there were thousands and thousands of unemployed persons that were returning from the United States at the end of the Bracero program.
The Bracero program was an agreement between Mexico and the United States for the contracting of workers on a temporary basis. That agreement was terminated by the United States in 1965, and the Maquiladora program was offered by the United States to the Mexican government as an alternative, as an option for the employment of those Mexican migrants that had to go back to the country after the termination of the Bracero program.
Well, when the plants first came to the city, we all expected them to hire the unemployed male. But very soon we discovered that the unemployed male population was not the ideal workforce, and young women between the ages of 16 and 21 were the only ones hired.
Nearly 90% of all workers in offshore production are women. They've become breadwinners in environments where employment is scarce for men as well as for women. The fate of many Mexican border women has been to work as maids in nearby American towns. Crossing the border surreptitiously at 6 each morning, a woman can earn far more than the $4 a day wage in a maquiladora factory. But factors other than money are considered by Mexican women, such as escaping the humiliation of possible arrest and deportation by the Border Patrol, and the pride of working in their own country.
The maquiladora industry is something that is presented in a package where there are not too many alternatives, particularly in a period of crisis. The main point right now is to produce jobs. Produce jobs first and think later.
Last year, workers' take-home pay was 860 pesos a day. Families that were used to buy 5 kilos or 5 dozen tortillas for their family were down to 1. There was no one eating meat regularly, not even once a month. We had people buying eggs by the unit and milk by the glass, and this in order to keep up some of their strength.
The maquiladora industry is expanding tremendously. The wages in Mexico are one of the lowest in the world.
They've been very good workers, and they're still very good workers. On the other hand, I think that particular situation has been overplayed or maybe played out of context by a lot of people doing, quote, research, end of quote, into the in-bond industry. Sometimes we forget that if you take an electronics sub-assembly plant in Mexico, if you look at the parent company plant in Wisconsin or Nebraska or wherever, the bulk of their force is also feminine because there simply very damn good at putting the product together. They've got an enormous degree of dexterity, and they're just very good at it.
Without being chauvinistic, the female worker is more able to assemble small, intricate components than a male worker. The people that do the job better are female.
We know one thing. We cannot get any more maids in this area. They're all working in the maquiladoras.
Yes, these jobs are very important to women because these women do learn something that developing countries need to know. They do have a tremendous amount of innovative and creative ability. They invent things and they change the product, they change the process. They learn the skill of modern industrial production.
Compared to men, employers feel women work harder for less pay without complaint. Thus, Mexican men often must abandon their neighborhoods in search of work across the U.S. border, while women remain behind, responsible for home and children.
Me separé, entré a la fábrica.
When I went to work at the factory, it was just another routine.
Rutina, ¿verdad? Ya no eran las cacerolas, sino eran componentes, ¿verdad?
It wasn't pots and pans, it was components.
Pero yo sigo siendo igual trabajo de...
It's the same work every day, from 6 in the morning until I go to bed.
Hay que trabajar. Hay que traer el pan a la casa.
I have to bring bread into this house.
Hay que vivir una vida de caricatura, ¿vale?
We live a life like cartoons, running all the time.
Pero pues a la vez es satisfactorio porque pues los niños lo recompensan todo con su cariño.
It is satisfying because the children give me my reward with their love, their enthusiasm. The ones who are studying have good grades. That's the reward for the work I do.
Y no estar sentada un solo rato, me dicen...
Relatives say, please give those poor feet a rest. They never have a vacation. I say, the day I die, they're going to rest. But while alive, you just have to take advantage of life.
Ang nanay, sa ngayon, nasa probinsya siya. Tapos, bilang housekeeper and at the same time...
My mother lives in the countryside. She keeps house and at the same time works in the rice fields.
You know, the rainy season's coming and the house needs repair. Any more holes in the roof and our house is going to slide right down this hill. The money I'm making in the fields, it's hardly enough for food.
Dahil na rin sa kahirapan nga, nagkaroon ako ng idea.
Because of our poverty, I decided to help my parents. My father's salary was not enough to support the family.
Nagiging sapat para sa amin. Nagkaroon ako ng idea na kailangan makapagtrabaho ako, maging independent ako.
I had this idea that I should work to be independent from my family, to be able to stand on my own. I can't depend on my parents forever.
Ambisyon, kung maambisyon nga matatawag na.
My ambition was to continue my education and to get a college degree.
By the hundreds of thousands, young women across southern and eastern Asia follow dreams of education and the promise of work. They leave rice fields and villages to swell the populations of cities and industrial zones. To survive, as many as 10 women share a single boarding house room, sleeping, eating, and living together.
At ako lang ang talagang inaasahan sa bahay. Pagtatrabaho.
I'm the only breadwinner in our family.
Magpahinga. Mula pagkapang umaga
I work 12 hours a day.
Bali, 12 oras ako nagtatrabaho sa loob ng isang araw. Nung mga katagalan ko na.
As time goes by, I can feel the hardships inside the factory. We are killing ourselves just to reach a quota that's being forced on us. We don't even have time to eat.
Even if they are drowsy and they want to go to sleep, they try to produce what they are asked to produce.
Dahil sa hangad ko talagang maano ng trabaho, ayaw ko talagang matanggal. Tinanggap ko rin, pero nagtiis din ako.
I didn't want to lose my job, so I agreed to all the forced quotas.
Sa kota, ganon. Bigla akong papapasukin ng gabi yung sa third shift. Eh, syempre, nahihirapan din akong
Without warning, they often forced me to work all day and night, and I developed a fever. I complained to the clinic, but they didn't pay any attention, so I got very sickly. My stamina grew weaker, maybe because of the pollution and environment.
Sinabi ko lang sa kapatid ko na kailangan lumipat na lang ako ng ibang
I decided to leave the zone and thought maybe it would be better in Manila.
We no longer live in a 5-mile diameter world, as we did back in the 1800s when we were largely an agrarian society. We live in a society that includes literally all people of the world. If a worker in someplace else, for instance in Asia, is doing better work for less money, that's going to impact us here in the United States.
For the last 2 to 5 years, there's been a real lot of layoffs in the industry at the very large corporations. And we're talking about like Signetics, Intel, National Semiconductors, in which there's been a lot of layoffs, and they've been moving their production lines to Taiwan, to the Philippines, to Korea. And we're really concerned about it here in the Silicon Valley because 1/4 of our labor force is involved in the industry.
Atari is in the business of making consumer electronics products at an affordable price and at a competitive price. Manufacturing costs rising, it was becoming increasingly difficult to keep those prices at attractive levels. So what we did is we took a look at our options and finally came up with the idea of moving most of our manufacturing plants to the Far East.
Burned. I feel burned. Burned because not too long ago I was going around saying, well, I'm not going to stop working until there's no more work, you know? And I said, well, as long as Atari keeps on making their things, I'll never be out of work. I'm out of work today. I don't have no job, you know?
It's my understanding there's been no major high-tech firm that's ever had the audacity or the feeling that they can get away with a move like this to just eliminate 1,700 jobs and announce they're going to pick them up on the other end of the Pacific Ocean. If there are no existing laws where a multinational corporation has to pay some sort of allegiance to the people that work in the community, that got this company off the ground, participated in the making of record profits, and they can up and go at any particular time, then I think we have a problem.
What do you think of those layoffs? Would you like to help us to stop?
At the time of the Atari layoffs, a trade union was in the midst of an organizing drive. Today, organizers face obstacles different from those 50 years ago.
I think we've passed out union authorization cards, and I'd like for people to sign those if we can and give them to me, okay?
So that means all the people who've been laid off in Sunny who haven't signed.
As companies crisscross the globe, workers are placed in confusing and vulnerable positions.
Terminations. That would eliminate them from participating.
They said they're going to lay us off in stages, right? Okay, they're going to call us in one by one and let us know who's going when.
If the layoffs had occurred after the union was in, by federal law, the company would have to bargain the layoffs. If you're unionized before, we would have a direct bargaining relationship. We can negotiate the severance pay.
Offshore production erodes union organizing efforts and worker bargaining power.
It's the labor board that's going to stand up behind us, not the union, because we're
Yeah.
We're working on it, but we're not yet.
No, you do not have a union right now. They go ahead and make the move. The only thing we can rely on is federal law. Okay,
Once
period.
we get the unions in, what do we use for bargaining power to get whatever severance pay, we're going to get?
They're going anyway.
And what do we say? We're going to walk out and you guys find somebody else to get our product out?
And that's really where your bargaining power comes from. How would they get the material which you guys are packing up right now and floating to Taiwan to get that factory operating?
They could get some.
They can always get somebody to do it. They've got you guys' back to the wall.
In the end, more than 2,700 workers lost their jobs at Atari. They packed and shipped the company's machinery to Taiwan.
Gosh, there's going to be a lot more people unemployed. There's so many now. It's just terrible. I mean, from General Motors, from Atari, from Signetics, from Fairchild, from all these companies. I mean, that's a lot of people to be unemployed in one area.
The jobs that will be here will basically be for skilled people, your engineers and these kinds of people. So this area in the Silicon Valley or other areas where they have a lot of electronic plants are going to be basically research and development areas.
The production and assembly itself will probably be just completely gone. At least 99.9% of it will be gone.
Initially, the work was done in Hong Kong, in South Korea, and in Taiwan. Later on, it progressed into other parts of the world: Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines.
Manila had no semiconductor work whatsoever. Ample labor supply, lots of unemployment, a huge city. As the wage pressures grew in other Asian countries, people started looking at the Philippines. What can we do? And in a period of about 6 years, from zero, they employed 50,000 people in 25 companies making semiconductors.
Primarily, the motivation was economic. The cost of labor in the United States had gone up to an almost unacceptable extent. The second reason was possibly political. There was a need to stabilize the regimes in certain areas of the world, and the best way to stabilize a regime is to assist it to attain economic self-sufficiency. You must find a home where labor is relatively peaceful and easy to manage.
Mga kababayan, alam po naman ninyo na kagaling-galing po lamang sa Amerika.
I have just returned from the United States, and they love Filipino workers. I told them, we have a saying.
Only beautiful products can come from happy people.
It is in the political interest of the United States to transfer production work to countries like the Philippines and thereby stabilize the position of the United States in the Pacific Basin or in Africa or in Latin America, wherever the process is to take place.
Natanggap ako sa Dynetics, mapasok nga ako doon. Excited na excited.
I was excited when they gave me a job at Dynetics in Manila.
Oh, maganda rito, malaki nga ang sweldo namin, katunayan.
The salary seemed high.
Yung sa pagsusuot nila.
And then I saw the uniforms. Beautiful, so I knew it was going to be better working in electronics than in a textile factory.
Sa mga textile lang. Nung nasa loob pa ako, nasa second optical inspector ako, yung gumagamit ng high-power microscope.
As an optical inspector, I used high-powered microscopes. It's very hard because for 8 continuous hours, your eyes are focused in this microscope. This is very straining, and many complain about this.
Marami nga nagko-complain yan eh.
My daughter, who works in an electronics factory, told me I can't go on any longer because my eyes can't see anymore.
Sometimes we vomit, we faint, and we get permanently blurred vision.
It's a hazard of the trade in any part of the world. So if one puts up a factory in Hong Kong now, he has a real problem getting the girls to do scope work. It's not so in the Philippines. As a matter of fact, they like scope work, and they do diminish their eyesight if they don't follow normal procedure. But these girls are all high school and college girls. They're in their teens and in their 20s, and they can take a lot of abuse. They abuse their bodies a lot.
There's a place in that factory that the moment you enter, you cannot open your eyes because of the fumes. You can't breathe. We complained about this, but the answer we got was, it's a matter of getting used to it.
The matter of toxic chemicals in the thin plating area. In these areas, the workers are given special protective breathing devices.
Why do these women age so rapidly? Some have spoken of real burnout. It may be the stress in the plant, it may be toxic materials. You're going to find all of these things combining to destroy the worker at a very young age. A woman was old by the age of 23, and in the electronics industry and in the textile industry could go a little older to the age of 27.
There is no security, because after a few months, a few years, you'll be fired. Then there'll be new recruits.
It's the management that makes companies run. It's not the production line. If you have a single management, you have absolute control of what goes on day to day in the factory. You can adjust to changes. A new technological change is made in your product, you can install it quicker. You can match the vagaries of the market. If the market diminishes suddenly because of some reason, you can cut production back.
On January 30th,
one of the worst things which happened was in January, when 2,000 of us were laid off. We won't forget it. We held a meeting with management and asked why they had laid off 2,000 people. They told us it can be likened to a ship which is sinking. You have to find ways to lighten the load and get rid of some of the people so the ship won't go down. I told them you should find other ways that would save the people and not drown them.
I heard them say, okay, go on strike. We will just transfer the factory to another country.
I think the underlying force behind the policy is that these plants want the mobility to move any place in the world, and they do not need to guarantee any worker seniority.
The problem with the maquiladora industry is to think that it's either a panacea on the one hand or a work of the devil on the other hand. The problem with the maquiladora industry is for countries or situations when they give carte blanche to the maquiladora industry and they come saving the life of a country and producing so many goods that the government doesn't put any kind of regulations, any kind of restrictions to these open doors.
Before I got married, I was working. I convinced my husband to let me keep my job, even though the wages in these factories are practically nothing. With the miserable salaries of the two of us, it's not even enough to buy the basics. I have worked as a solderer for 3 years. We don't have protection, so all the fumes go into our eyes. There is no ventilation for the fumes, so we absorb them ourselves.
The level of permissible use of certain toxic, very toxic type of materials is much higher in Mexico than it is in the United States. For taken by the plants to protect their workers are also almost non-existent.
For a long time, I have seen all the injustices committed against us, and I always repressed the anger.
Estando dentro de México,
Within Mexico, the worker has certain constitutional rights,
garantías individuales de la Constitución,
individual guarantees, federal laws, labor laws that are supposed to protect us. And yet, we're kind of semi-slaves.
semi-esclavos, y eso no es mentira. Es verdad.
My name is Scott Lind. I'm a reporter for The Monitor in McAllen. McAllen is located about 10 miles north of Reynosa, one of the principal border towns in Mexico. In November, I first met a group of Zenith Maquiladora workers. The industrial site included companies with house that any North American would know. Not only Zenith, but also General Electric.
Industrial work puts women into contact with one another. This is one of the experiences that most women throughout these last 15 years have said has been the most meaningful part of their work in the twin plants. They begin to have friends, they begin to relate to one another, and they begin to establish a tremendous amount of solidarity, not only inside the plant, but in their neighborhoods, and also in regards to their personal problems.
At first, I was afraid to take part in the workers' meetings because I thought I'd be suspended or fired. But later, I got brave. They explained to me about the federal labor laws. We began to study books. And I saw many ways we could improve the situation in the plant.
There came a time when one of our fellow workers asked for a higher salary. Instead of listening to him, they beat him up and put him under arrest.
Todos protestamos.
So we all decided to protest and we stopped working.
We went to the maquiladora factories at 4 o'clock in the morning. We didn't have enough cardboard to write on to tell people what the strike was about, so we wrote on our work aprons. We want an increase. This is a strike. Enough injustice. Fantastic, cried an older woman. We should all go on strike.
Compañeras, compañeros, estamos conscientes
11 of the 12 maquiladora factories, including the giants Zenith and General Electric, were struck by more than 8,000 employees. This was the first general strike in Latin America's export processing industry.
To win, we need to become a united force. If we don't help the Zenith workers, they won't be able to win, and then we won't gain anything either.
It's a necessity that we get justice. We are here to defend our rights. We are hungry for justice.
The workers will suffer through the unrest that they're creating as a consequence of the union activity, and the industry suffers because they're being affected by this situation. The end result is that, on one side, the industry tends not to increase its operations in this area. They are thinking of going elsewhere. They may be looking further on.
American industry is not looking for, they're not looking for any giveaways. The people who are working in those plants, they're the ones that caused the problems in Reynosa. The same thing is going to happen in Reynosa that is happening here in Matamoros. And that is that those companies will simply leave. They will go someplace else in Mexico.
When a woman worker begins to demand or ask for better working conditions, for higher salaries, the first argument, not only of management, but also almost the city and the region, the state, begins to underline for her, and not very subtly, that If she continues along, or if they continue along that line, then the plant will leave. So, and enough of them have left, so that this is not an idle threat.
If you were an American businessman doing business over there, wouldn't you consider moving your operation to some place where you could reduce the amount of fringe benefits that are being paid to your employees? You could reduce the amount of pay being paid to your employees. That is, you could reduce it from something in excess of 1,000 pesos per day down to approximately 600 pesos per day. And you could get 8 hours more work per employee. The answer is obvious.
Who isn't scared of losing their jobs? It's a psychological pressure. They threaten you. They say it's going to be our responsibility if the plants leave. But if the plants leave, it's their responsibility. It's got to be clear, though, that we don't want the plants to leave.
The strikers won some concessions from the companies, a brief 2-month wage increase, and for the first time, the right to elect their own union leadership. Democratic elections were allowed in choosing officers, and campaigning began to promote the candidates. The Reform Movement's candidates won by a landslide, but the newly elected officers were never allowed to be installed. Pressure was brought to bear on the leaders of the movement. The most visible participants began to lose their jobs, fired by the factory management. Four of the fired reform leaders protested by going on a hunger strike in Reynosa's main plaza. After 14 days, the atmosphere had grown tense.
My friends went on a hunger strike as a protest, and now the authorities have begun to threaten us. Sometimes they follow us, but the hunger that we feel helps us overcome our fear, and now we are no longer afraid.
They said they would bring the police from the U.S. side, and they would come into the factory and hit me to make me sign resignation papers. They told me to sign 2 sheets of paper, one in English, and the other was blank. But I refused to sign.
When the workers begin to open their eyes and realize how bad the conditions are inside the plants, the first thing the company does is fire them, without taking into account the time they've worked there, without caring if it's a man or a woman.
The following day, the hunger strikers were dragged from the plaza by police, taken to the hospital, and force-fed.
I was there in the plaza to organize with some fellow workers.
Pues yo estaba allí, ¿verdad? Tratando de más o menos de organizar con otros compañeros a ver qué íbamos a hacer.
And then came the reporter.
Un reportero, ¿no?
When I arrived, what I saw was the action by municipal police to remove the hunger strikers from their cots.
Cuando estaba levantando las notas en una libreta,
He was taking notes in a notebook, and the authorities came over and told him, "Come on, Blondie, write whatever you want, because tomorrow morning your body's going to end up floating in the river."
And then I turned around and saw that column of federal and municipal police approaching me.
I tried to stop them, and they hit me here with a pistol.
Imagino que con una pistola, un cachazo, yo creo.
Was taken into the place where they interrogated me. And I didn't know what was going to happen, and they didn't take the blindfold off.
Lo que es democracia.
The democracy they say we have, it's only an image.
Es imagen nada más.
And then at that point was when I felt extended electric shock against the left side of my neck.
Esta tortura, ¿verdad? Lo torturaron para
This torture, they did it to get him to confess something, that he was part of our movement. But it is not true. We didn't even know him.
No lo conocíamos.
They would shock me if I didn't give a strong enough answer. They would shock me if I didn't know an answer. I was being told that if I came out of this situation alive, that I should never, ever touch this story again.
The Philippines during the rule of President Ferdinand Marcos.
Our problem is that the law forbids us to organize. Our self-organizations and unions are illegal. They use the military to suppress us.
Ina-assemble namin lahat yung mga pinapagawa. Tapos, biglang matatapos niya sa
Assembly workers from electronic, textile, and garment factories had to meet secretly to compare working conditions, knowing that if discovered at meetings like this, they risked jail and possible torture.
Parang ispat-ispat na ano. Kahit yung ismak niya tingnan.
At my garment factory, they force us to work overtime. One night we couldn't stand it. We were hungry. But they locked the gates so we couldn't get out. We earn so little, it is not enough for daily subsistence. So we had to ask for a raise in order to live as human beings. But to get it, we were forced to strike.
Galit na galit siya dahil ang itinuturing niya mga gusamos at
We formed a human barricade to stop them from transferring the garments to another factory. Then the military came.
Now, regarding your question as to the violations on human rights that might have taken place, you do not have a Cambodia, the killing fields situation in Manila, obviously not. I definitely believe that in any lesser economy, you will find members of the military and the police establishment that are abusive. There are people who will take matters in their own hands. The question is, on a comparative basis, are we any worse off in the Philippines than in South Korea or in Indonesia or wherever?
Often I think of the harassments. And I worry about my family. Just suppose I die from my activities in the union. Who would support my parents? When we went on strike, I found my sister crying. She asked me why I joined the strike, and I told her, when it's time for you to work, you will understand.
We are protesting the involvement of the military in factory affairs. Almost all factories have this problem. Soldiers swoop down on us from different areas of the city. One of our houses was hit by bullets. Those are the holes.
Strapping ng mga security guard. Tinamaan ng isang bala si kasamang Antonio Bainosa.
Antonio Bainosa was here by his house.
May ano ng bahay nila. Dito sa
He was hit by the firing and fell, hit by a single bullet. His skull was cracked. His brains were scattered all over.
Tagtalsikan yung mga utak.
Right here, he died.
Doon lang at kaagad pinawian ng buhay.
Correspondents in the Philippines now have to report whatever they see, and perhaps one of the things they have seen is certain abuses that have happened in the disappearance of certain members of organized labor. That is probably what has happened. I do not think it is a national policy to abuse human rights in the Philippines. I do not think Marcos will tolerate it. It does not benefit him. I do not think the leaders of the army or the leaders of the police or the political leaders will tolerate it. But the abuses are there, as in any system, only they are more visible because we are now under a microscope.
Those jobs are going to provide a degree of economic stability. Those jobs also are going to provide a better degree of understanding us Americans, of who we are and what we're all about.
Capital has internalized and organized at international level, transboundary level. The workers have to correspond to that internationalization of capital with the internationalization of labor organization.
For a long time, we're going to see this offshore production and the international division of labor. And here is where I think there may be the key. I think country by country unionization is not going to be the answer. Maybe industry-wide unionization. I can't see why a company with a plant in Taiwan, with another one in England, with another one in the United States, with another one in Mexico, with another one in the Caribbean, and with another one in the Philippines, another one in Sri Lanka, or wherever, where the industry itself, the workers could really organize industry by industry, even if it is an international workforce. And in this way, inform one another of wage rates within their country's reality and negotiate under the whole spectrum.
I'm all alone now. My daughter's in the city. Even with her help, I can't seem to make it. And now I heard about a strike.
I try to be strong. I try to give my mother words that will make her strong. So I told her that maybe the time will come when she will understand what I'm doing and what I've helped to start.
Dahil nakikita ko talaga sa nanay emotionally upset na siya sa nangyayari sa akin. Dahil marami nga kami mga frustration na na-encounter. Pero sinasabi ko pa rin
These
sa kanya
experiences have changed me. I'm not the person I was before, and I cannot turn my back on the things I have begun.
Pinipilit lang ni nanay na unawain ang kalagayan ko ngayon. Dahil nakita rin niya, nasimulan ko, pangit din naman talaga talikuran ko kung ano yung nasimulan ko.